In the game of chess, every game that you play begins with a single choice. What opening will you choose? This single choice shapes the strategy, the tone, and sometimes even the outcome of an entire game. Today, we'll be embarking on a deep exploration of these battlegrounds, tiering all 20 possible opening moves to help you figure out what opening you should play. We'll be starting this video off with the F tier, and the way I define F tier is this is an opening that gives Black a substantial advantage in the opening, whether or not it's a structural, strategic, or even tactical advantage. And at the bottom of the F tier, we're going to be talking about the Grob. The Grob has an awful reputation, and in general, this is for good reason. You create a substantial weakness. So a good opening to me is one where you control the center, develop your pieces, and get the king to safety. But the Grob ignores all of these opening principles. Playing g4, the king is no closer to safety. Many times white would like to castle kingside, but that's just not going to be possible because the roof of white's defense is completely annihilated. On top of that, bishop to g2, which seems like a smart idea, but this pawn here on g3 is much better. g4, it's a bit overextended, and even a move like d5, and all of a sudden, this pawn is just going to get eaten alive. It's not a good pawn to have, so you can't really castle, you're not controlling the center, and development in general, this doesn't really help. The Grob is not just a bad opening, it's the worst possible opening move you can play. We will now move up our F tier to the next move, F3, the Barnes. The Barnes opening is really bad, and for me, there are a few reasons why it gives Black a massive advantage. For starters, it's very passive in the center, and a move like e5 comes with extra venom because notice the dark square diagonal is very weak. Normally, you'd want to naturally develop the knight to f3 in order to basically stop the queen from coming in and delivering a quick checkmate. But of course, that is not possible because the f3 pawn actually blocks the knight. On top of that, our development is obviously halted. Are we going to castle kingside, queenside? We're not really close to either. And Black already has a nice stake in the center. There's just no reason to play f3. In general, there are really only two reasons why somebody would play the Barnes. One is if they're trying to play the bomb cloud, as chess.com calls the wrong cloud. This is just a troll opening where you're saying, I'm so much better than you that I can play a fake opening and win. Of course, the second reason why you might see this type of opening is it's a mouse slip or a finger slip, and they meant to play f4 the birds, which is very viable. It's much higher up on our list, and we'll talk about it a bit later. But in general, unless you're trolling or made a mistake, you should never play the Barnes. It's a really bad opening that creates a lot of weaknesses for white. Moving towards the center of our F tier, we now talk about the sodium attack, knight a3. And after this move is played, there are a few reasons why I think Black is much better, but the most simple is you're not controlling the center and you've developed your knight to a bad square where it's on the rim. They say a knight on the rim is dim, and it's very true. Here, after e5, I think Black can claim a massive advantage after just scooping up this knight and weakening the a-file. I know that white now has the bishop pair, but notice that white is not any closer to castling kingside, and Black can just play knight f6, castles, and is in much better position, and these pawns are a long-term weakness in the endgame. While the sodium attack isn't as bad as the other two openings we covered prior, it's still really bad and clearly gives Black a huge advantage right out of the gate. Finishing out our F tier, we have knight h3, the Amar opening. So the Amar opening, in my opinion, is slightly better than the sodium attack for the simple reason that white is a little bit closer to castling. However, this is not enough to make it a D tier opening for the simple reason that still d5 is played, and you have to figure out like how exactly are you planning on dealing with this threat. You can try g3 here, and in my opinion, while Black does have a substantial advantage, I think this is just a little bit better than going knight a3. It goes without saying that despite the fact that the Amar opening is slightly better than the sodium attack, it has a lot of the same weaknesses. You're not developing the knight to the correct square, you're not controlling the center, knight in the rim is dim. You are simply giving Black a substantial advantage, and for this reason, the Amar opening is still definitely an F tier opening. Okay, so we're gonna be moving on to our D tier now, and the way we're gonna categorize D tier is going to be openings that aren't giving Black a massive advantage, but you're conceding some sort of slight advantage to black, which obviously isn't really a great thing to do as white. You want an advantage. And at the very bottom of D tier, we have the Polish opening. Now, I do not think the Polish opening is as bad as its cross-country counterpart, the Grob. In my opinion, it's not as big a deal to blow up the queen side with the idea of castling short, so I don't think this is bad. One of the main ways to play is just e5, bishop b2, and after the bishop takes, our bishop takes, and the bishop can either retreat back to f8 or knight to f6, defending this weakness. But either way, you do get a relatively strong bishop, and you're going to look to develop and castle very quickly. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Polish is a good opening. I am simply articulating that it is better than the Grob. You're not developing, and you're sort of developing that bishop, but you're not really controlling the center, and your king isn't any closer to safety, so you're not really making productive moves. The Polish is still bad, it's just not that bad. Moving towards the center of D tier, we now have h4, the Karas. And the Karas is a bad opening, but it's not that bad. Like, yes, you're not going to want to castle kingside, but your opponent isn't really going to want to castle kingside either. Odds are both sides are probably going to castle long, so I think this weakness to the king side is bad, but not that bad. Now, of course, we're not controlling the center. We're not any closer to developing, and h4 is a very useless move, and very quickly you can get yourself in a lot of trouble playing these flank pawns because your opponent will just completely control the center. They say that a bad plan is better than no plan at all, and I think the Karas is a great example of this, where we're going to attack the king side. It might not be the best plan, but it's a way to play, and it's not awful. It's definitely pretty bad, but you might get lucky. You might be able to play some games, and you can definitely push for a win. Still, I don't recommend it. Finishing off our D tier, we have a4, the Ware, and the Ware is bad, but it's not that bad, and I'd argue that it's not as bad as h4, the Karas, because here you're going to attack the queen side, and you're going to castle king side. They're the same weaknesses as before. You're not controlling the center, you're not developing, your king's no closer to castling. I will have a much easier time recommending openings at the higher tiers, because at that point you're at least playing even, if not better, as white. But at this point, we're still in the bad openings, and I would consider this the best of the worst. We now move into the C tier, and with the C tier, it's a very simple criteria. This is an opening that is not good or bad for white. It's kind of like a nothing move. You haven't given up any sort of advantage, but you haven't really pushed an advantage either. And at the very bottom of the C tier, we have the Zaragoza opening. The Zaragoza opening starts after c3 with the basic core idea of eventually pushing d4, so you're preparing this push. Now, the issue is you can just play d4 immediately. There's no need to play c3. Now, this is almost a D tier opening because the knight cannot develop to c3, but if you go a little bit further, actually after knight to d4, the knight's going to eventually develop to d2, the queen's going to go to c2, and I don't think this is bad for white. It's just decent. I mean, this bishop is going to have some issues developing. You can try to get to f4 very quickly. The knight, maybe kill the bishop, maybe the bishop comes to d3. It's not a good opening. It's not a bad opening. You're just not pushing for an advantage. And as white, if I'm going to recommend an opening, I want you to be attacking and going for winning chances. Next up in our C tier, we have the Mises opening d3. And the idea is to eventually push for c4. The reason why this is kind of a pointless move is because obviously you can just go c4 to begin with. But it's not a bad opening because your development isn't halted at all. The knights will still go to c3 and f3, unlike c3 that blocked the knight. This knight can now go to f3. The bishops will develop normally as well. We're not necessarily closer to castling, but it's not that far away either. And we may even want to castle long in this situation. So overall, same story as the last opening. I don't think this is bad at all. I'd argue that it's almost pretty good, but just play c4. Why do you have to prepare that move? Moving to the middle of C tier, we have an almost tie for the middle, but at the end of the day, I think h3, the Clemens, is next up on this list. This move is a nothing move. simply put. Like, you're playing h3, preventing any sort of knight g4, bishop g4 ideas later on, but it's so premature and you're not controlling the center. At the end of the day, you're basically just giving your opponent the chance to go first. You're saying, you know what, I don't like playing white, you go first, I'm just gonna play h3. And really, after your opponent plays, you can still control the center, develop, and do everything you normally do. It's definitely not a disadvantage. Next up on C tier, we have a3, the Anderson, and it's basically the exact same deal as the Clemens. You're preventing knight to c6, knight to b4 ideas, as well as bishop to b4 ideas, but the question remains, why are you doing this early? It's just too early. You want to try to control the center instead. At the end of the day, you're pretty much just tossing the ball in your opponent's court and letting black go first. Finishing off the C tier, we have B3, the Nimzo Larsen. And I actually think the Nimzo Larsen is a good opening. It's almost B tier, but the only issue with B3 is you actually don't need to play it this early. So essentially the idea is to put your bishop on B2 and attack this long diagonal. You're going to develop relatively normally and castle kingside. You may even want to play something like F4, E4, and take over the center. But the issue is, why are you playing B3 this early? For example, let's say you played knight C3 instead, which I think is a better opening, and your opponent went G6, trying to kettle the bishop as soon as possible. You can still play B3, bishop B2, and you can still get this bishop on B2, there's no rush. In other words, the idea of the Nimzo Larsen in playing B3 isn't bad at all. Kettle the bishop and attack on the long diagonal, but B3 is a waste move. There are better moves to play, and for that reason, it finishes off our C tier. Now, before getting into the only 8 openings I would recommend, B tier, A tier, and S tier, if you are enjoying this video, finding it entertaining or insightful, please go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. At the end of the day, it helps me out tremendously, and I want to create tons of more content, more tier lists, more chess content for you guys. Let's get into the B tier. And the criteria for B tier is simple. It gives white a slight advantage. It's a good opening and it follows principles. To start off the B tier, we're gonna go into the King's Fianchetto G3. G3 is a really good opening for a bunch of reasons. Now, I know a lot of you may note that we're not actually controlling the center, and that's actually okay. Now, don't get me wrong, there are better openings where you control the center early, but here, really, no matter what your opponent plays, you're gonna be in decent shape. So for example, if like D5, we can just go knight F3, preventing the E5 push. And then our next move will be bishop G2 and castling. We'll control the center, we'll have king safety and decent development. That's why I think this is a good opening that is strong for white. If our opponent tries something else, like let's say E5, preventing the knight from going F3, we can then go E4 and go for the exact same plan. This works just fine too. It's a good opening, but it's not an excellent A or S tier opening because there are actually other openings that do the exact same plan, but better and more accurately. With that in mind, it's a good plan and it maintains white's advantage, putting it right in the B tier. Coming in next in our B tier, we have E3, the Van Kruijs. The Van Kruijs is a good opening. And I know you don't really control the center like in other really strong openings, and that's probably why this isn't A or S tier, but E3 does have a lot of good ideas. The bishop and queen develop very naturally. In that regard, the knights can develop to the normal C3, F3 squares as well, and technically, we're a little bit closer to castling because after bishop to c4, knight to f3, we can castle in 3 moves. So overall, this is a solid opening. Now, one thing about the Van Kruijs, and in general, a theme with the B tier, is that there are other better openings that use their ideas more effectively, and that is why this is only a B tier opening. Still, we have great development. The king is going to get the safety very shortly, and on top of that, we do get a slight control of the center with E3. Next up in the middle of the B tier, we have the Van Geet, which is knight to C3. Knight to C3 is a great move, and I want you to understand that the point of knight to C3 is to play B3, bishop B2. And by the way, this is an opening that we saw in the C tier, which is the Nimzo Larsen. To understand why this is B tier, we'll also explain why the Nimzo Larsen is C tier. This knight here actually controls the center, and by playing B3, you aren't able to do that. So for example, if B3, our opponent may play knight to D5 right away, and after knight C3, we can't even get our knight to the square. So instead, getting the knight to C3 earlier, and if our opponent does choose to play D5, then playing D4, and we're still going to be able to kettle this bishop if we like, and really there's no rush. We can also castle kingside or queenside, and we're going to have a pretty good game as white. Now, interestingly about this opening, it does the idea of the Nimzo Larsen, but better, which is kind of the opposite of the other two openings, where there are better openings that use their ideas more effectively. However, my big problem with these types of openings is that our opponent's dark square bishop is much stronger, as oftentimes they will castle short and kettle their bishop as well. And I think our bishop, while it may seem like a strength, could end up being a liability. Still, it's a great opening for white, and you're going to be able to play nice attacks. Just be careful. Now, to finish off the B tier, I have a very controversial opinion, but F4 the birds opening. Now, many people treat F4 the birds as kind of like a meme or a joke, but I promise this is an excellent opening used by many grandmasters. I've even used this to beat titled players before. Even though the engine doesn't necessarily love this opening, it does a lot of amazing things that help us in the opening. And on top of that, it's very strong and keeps you on the attack. So for example, a big issue with the Barnes opening that was F3 was that E5 was played, the queen would come out and attack the king. But here, because we played F4, E5 is not a great move. So usually D5 is played, we go knight F3, and the knight now covers the dark square. So we're gonna play a dark squared strategy. The idea is going to be to kettle the bishop on B2, bring the queen around to G3, and go for a checkmate on the king side. Our knight will either develop to C3 or D2, and this bishop here will try to trade off on B5. It can even kettle on G2. While the engine doesn't necessarily love this opening, I do, and this is my list. The birds opening is excellent, and I promise you, if you give it a try and learn some theory, you can really throw people off and win some games. Now we move on to the A tier, and for the A tier, we have a very simple criteria. White has a massive advantage and optimizes it almost perfectly. To start off the A tier, we're gonna go with the English opening C4. Now, C4, you can kind of look at it like a less risky, more sound birds opening where F4 is played. For example, the king's diagonal is not open, just the queen's. Here, instead of playing a dark squared strategy, we're playing a light squared strategy, kettling this bishop and putting this knight on C3. You get really good control of the center, development is very natural, and you're gonna castle kingside eventually under this kettled bishop. So it's going to be a very nice game for white. I don't really have many negative things to say about the English. It's a great choice and it's well worth learning. There really aren't any flaws other than the fact that maybe attacks are a little bit more slow developing, but still there aren't any flaws either, and it's very difficult for your opponent to attack back. Moving on to the middle of our A tier, we have D4, the queen's pawn. D4 is the most direct way we've looked at controlling the center, literally plopping a pawn right in there. These games tend to be slow developing, just like the English, and I find that if you're looking for a draw or looking for a slow game where you can't lose in the opening, this is the way to do it. You're going to develop your knights in a very easy to remember way. Your bishop will usually play on this diagonal. You can either kettle this bishop or your bishop can come this way. A fun line that I usually play is the Queen's Gambit, sacrificing a pawn, but immediately taking the center. Your ideas will be very positional, looking to control space, develop, and get a small advantage, maybe win a pawn or create an isolated pawn or weakness on black side. This opening is not for everybody, and it's certainly not the best opening, but it's pretty darn close. It's the second most played opening, and that's for a reason. If you want to play less risky, more fundamental, tactical, strategic chess, this is the opening for you, hands down. At the top of the A tier, we have knight f3, the ready opening. The ready is the most flexible opening in all of chess. With knight f3, you haven't committed a single pawn move, yet you already control the center. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the King's Fianchetto g3. In this situation, after e5, knight to f3, our opponent can play e4. This move order is objectively worse. So when I said that there's a better idea than the King's Fianchetto, it's knight f3, the ready, because now e5 is not possible. In terms of openings, it hits every single mark on our checklist: controlling the center, developing our pieces, king safety, and an element of flexibility where your pawns haven't even moved yet. This is the perfect opening for people who are open-minded, flexible, and want a clear plan with their bishop. Finally, we move into the S tier, the best opening you can possibly play. Now, there is only one opening that fits that criteria, and it's best by test, e4. E4 is absolutely incredible. It's the best way to seize initiative as white. The pawn on e4 controls the center. You're going to be able to get your bishop and queen out very quickly. You are going to castle very quickly. There's a lot of theory, and odds are you can get very quick wins, but also quick losses. So studying is imperative. However, e4 is best by test. This is confirmed by Bobby Fischer, and honestly, every top level player agrees. If you want to attack, if you want to have fun, engaging, dynamic games, you play e4. It is the best opening in chess. With that in mind, if you disagree with my list or you think that certain openings are better than others, let me know in the comment section below. Also, let me know if you have any ideas for what kind of tier list you want to see next. I am open to ideas. Stay classy, my friends. Until next time.